Dr. Chuck the Science Schmuck.
Alright, here we see the basic accoutrements of a saltwater aquarium in its most primitive form. One, up here, that's the power filter. So that's an ordinary filter, got it from Walmart for like, I don't know, $15, $20, sized for a 10-gallon tank, which they say on the side of the box is sized for a 10-gallon, 10 to 30 gallons, but this vertical is not small enough for that, so it's kind of tilted, but that's fine. Behind that, that tubular thing, that's the heater, also from Walmart. That was like $20, kind of expensive. They have actually improved it since I was using them before. The old ones had a single red light that would turn on when they were active. The modern ones have a bicolor LED. Turns green when it's not heating, red when it is heating. The old heaters also had a thermostat that would fail and eventually cook and boil your fish tank. Not literally boiling, but your fish would die. So, hopefully they fix that. As I already mentioned, the lid is made of plexiglass with the additional aspect of this piece of PVC, which sits there to prevent splashage, 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 whatever. And the light here is accommodated for by this, don't want to drop that in, will electrocute myself and everything around me. That's a clamp lamp connected to a timer, 14-watt LED bulb. Not really enough if you want to grow coral, but I'm not putting coral in this system. The basic checks that I've already run, I've already checked the salinity when I made the water, and rechecked it recently to make sure it's good. The other thing you want to be sure of, get out your hand level horizontally. Level the other way. Aquarium will look level sometimes and it'll operate non-level, but you're actually stressing the joints of the aquarium and you're potentially going to fall over. This one's kind of a little rickety. As long as no one bumps into it, we should be fine. It'll eventually sink into the carpet. Also, a pet peeve of mine, especially with regard to stripper poles, is lack of consideration for the joist. Always put your stripper pole into a joist. Always put your saltwater aquariums or any aquarium over a joist. This wall sits directly on the joist of the house. It's in the ceiling. I almost hit my head on it when I was making my underground garden. Repeatedly. That's the weight-bearing, load-bearing beam underneath the building. So this is well secured in a place where it is up against the biggest, strongest portion of the house, so it's not going to go through the floor. I'd recommend against putting it in the middle of the floor so that it doesn't fall through. Also because that's a dumb place for an aquarium. You'll fall through. Unless you have like a concrete floor and you want to do like a massive centerpiece aquarium, then just do like 1,000 gallons. No one's going to knock that over. Now comes the hard part. We have to add life. Well, now's the part where I have to add the life to the aquarium. So that's a difficult thing to do, and there's considerations involved with that. Firstly, aquariums go through a process of cycling, which I'm ignoring. I can do that, I think, because I have enough scientific knowledge to be able to negotiate around it. You normally don't want to do that. What is cycling? Cycling is the process by which an aquarium develops the ability to process ammonia. Life forms in an aquarium that are not plants generate ammonia from digesting protein. Ammonia is toxic, but the filter converts that by biological activity. There's bacteria in there that consume nitrogen in the form of ammonia, convert it to nitrite, which is a different ion that has nitrogen in it. That's very toxic too. Other bacteria then convert that into nitrate. So that is the cycling process, which has first an ammonia spike, then a nitrite spike, then you start producing nitrates, which in a freshwater aquarium don't really matter. In a saltwater aquarium are pretty fatal in their own right. Ignoring that, a lot of people put fish in their tank first to handle that. And in my experience, the fish people most commonly use for cycling are blue damselfish. Do not use blue damselfish unless you are a glutton for punishment. There's several problems with blue damselfish. The first being, they're all wild caught. You know how they're caught? Divers go down, they snap the coral, which the damselfish hide in, and throw it away, and they get the damselfish. That's how they catch them. It's not actually coral, it's a hydrozoan, but it grows very slowly, so that's very destructive. They're all wild caught. Almost everything except clownfish in saltwater is wild caught from the ocean somewhere, because the life cycle requires open water, which you can't really create in an environment. Although most clownfish, interestingly enough, are captive bred these days. It's very rare to find a wild caught clownfish. That's why there's so many color morphs and why they look so great. But damselfish are very hardy. They're also very aggressive. They will attack everything, including each other, including every other fish. They're very, very aggressive. And they are very, 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 take this from somebody who used to sell them, hard to catch. Almost impossible. So I instead got a different organism, which is in this box. And you say, why is it in a box that says avoid frost? Because today is approximately the last day this year where I will be successfully able to get sensitive tropical organisms in the mail before it gets cold. It's the middle of October, we're about in frost area. So I put in an order online for aquatic animals, which you can do. This company is not the one most people order from. This is Carolina Biological. They produce really good products. I actually ordered several different things for different projects, including a neat little fern, which will go in my garden. Yeah, see, look at that. Nice fern. That's not salt water, don't put that in salt water. What goes in salt water is this. These are very hard to get from any other source. You can't see them very well. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. What are these? These are sea anemones. You say, but sea anemones, that's not what you should put in your tank first. That is definitely not even something you should put in an aquarium. And when I tell you that these are Aiptasia, and you hear the sounds of millions of saltwater aquaria screaming, you'll know it's really not something you should put in aquaria. But I disagree with that. Aiptasia, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, it's Aiptasia, is a form of highly aggressive sea anemone. They are venomous. They do hurt if you touch them, but only slightly. But the reason why this anemone is the enemy of all saltwater aquarists is because they reproduce quickly. And saltwater aquarists generally don't like things that reproduce quickly. The idea of a saltwater aquascape is to produce a long-term stable environment that doesn't really change much. It's not dynamic. The coral is not meant to compete. And these things can outcompete any coral. This is one of the few anemones you'll find that somebody didn't pick out of the ocean or breed in a culture tube. They are bred in a culture tube. These reproduce incredibly fast. These are captive bred anemones. They are commonly used in scientific research because they breed so well. Even the smallest fragment of one is capable of reproducing into another anemone. And if just left by default, they will continue to grow and reproduce. I've raised these before. They are one of my favorite things to have in a saltwater environment. Let me see if I can get a better view for you on these. Anemones. So, that's what's going to go into the aquarium first. I don't even know if this video will include other organisms. I may introduce those later, if at all. What is that? Oh well. These guys just need to be put in and adapted. They're neat because they're not entirely carnivorous. They are entirely carnivorous, but they also have the they have the ability to photosynthesize through the use of internal brown-colored algae. Doesn't make them look very pretty, but I think they look super pretty. That's one of my primary criticisms about saltwater aquaria, is that nothing is good looking. Everything is bright colors, but boring. I don't want to look at another bright yellow fish or bright purple fish. I want browns. I want grays. I want dark, muddy colors and patterns. I'm a freshwater aquarist. Generally, I prefer catfish specifically. All those browns and whiskers. Can't really do catfish in a normal saltwater aquarium. But I can do these. So let's get to that. Well, doesn't that look grim? But the first step in any introduction is to place your bag of life, whatever it may be, on top of the water. Why do we place the bag on top of the water? The bag needs to equalize in temperature with the aquarium. Doesn't matter if this is fish, if it's invertebrates. The first step is to allow the temperature to slowly reach equilibrium. Temperature shock is a big deal with aquatic life, especially tropical saltwater life. So get it moving slowly. So we're going to let that sit for 15 to 30 minutes. Well, okay, now comes the hard part. It's been about 15 minutes. It's time to release them into their new environment, which has a unique challenge to it. So an anemone is not a very complicated organism. It's essentially a gut with tentacles and a foot. The foot is a suction-y thing on the bottom. That's the best way I can describe it. That is going to make this really hard. They have suctioned themselves onto the bag. Obviously, they can't stay in the bag. They need to come out. So the first thing to do is that filter. That needs to be turned off. Because they are not going to have their connection. Once their connection is established, they can sit for as long as they want. It won't really cause them any harm. But while they're not connected, I don't want to have them just bumping around and injuring themselves. They're comparatively fragile, but they reproduce from chunks, so no sleeves for this. The best way to get these out is to cut the bag on the side that does not have them on it. Now with more sensitive organisms, it would do to add some water, subtract some water, combine the chemical properties of the water. We're just going to go with it, because if this kills Aptasia, well, nothing kills Aptasia. These things are basically indestructible. So I'm going to merge carefully the water of the aquarium with the water of the bag. The goal is essentially to turn the bag inside out. And be careful not to cut an anemone. They can regenerate from that into like a million of themselves, but it's not great. These guys are a pretty good size for Aptasia. I don't want to ruin them. Don't expose them to air. They don't like that. They are venomous, so touching them will probably sting me, but not too severely. I'm just going to try to get them to... so I'm not using metal or any sort of blade. Oh, there's a guy. His foot stuck to me. Hopefully I didn't injure him too badly. Or her. Well, they don't have gender or biological sex. They're comparatively primitive. So I'm trying not to destroy them. Just to peel them. I've done this in the pet store with much larger, much stingier anemones. Those hurt. The feeling of getting stung by an anemone or a small jellyfish, because we've also been stung by those, even though we didn't really sell them, is similar to... Ooh, they have a... Okay, so the tentacles themselves have stingers, but there's also, like, threads that can shoot out and get you. Those threads... Yep, that guy just released his threads. He knows I'm here. He knows what's happening. Those threads are kind of sticking to my fingers. That's what it feels like. It is like somebody wrapped fishing line around your... The feeling of getting stung is like somebody wrapped fishing line around your finger and tightened it. This is actually damaging them more than I had hoped. Oh no, he's got me. He's colonizing my... Oh, that's his eaten tentacles. So that guy is actually trying to digest me. Get off. The light is distorting. That's probably ghosts. And I would recommend against doing this to any species that is less durable than Aptasia. Remember, the reason why we choose Aptasia for this application is because they are basically indestructible. You can kill them, but it is not something that is easy. Saltwater aquarists literally spend thousands of dollars, maybe not individually, but together in some unit, whatever a herd of saltwater aquarists is called, to kill these through complicated, difficult methods. The trouble being, in a reef tank where you have coral, remember I'm having no coral, if you have coral, the issue becomes whatever kills these will kill the coral long before it gets to the toxicity level needed to kill these things. Although I am getting stung, I'm actually not feeling it, which is nice. I enjoy not feeling pain. See, some of the first ones that already fell in are already starting to bind and right themselves. Now, when Aiptasia are very happy, they fully extend, and they are nowhere near that stage of their life yet. But they're starting to, re-grasp the substrate, which is the idea. This one is unusually pale. One important thing that I think I should probably note is that in any other context, other than Aiptasia, I do not recommend sea anemones for the beginning aquarist. Even the experienced aquarist will have a hard time. They're very, very sensitive, other than these. These grow in swamps, mangrove swamps. They're super durable. But, like, reef anemones, you're gonna have a hard time doing a lot of stuff. And that's kind of a thing that people do where, you know how clownfish live in an anemone? Or around it, they live in symbiosis, they hang out in the tentacles and don't get stung. A lot of people want to make that with clownfish. Everybody loves clownfish, Nemo, that sort of fish. And they're actually a pretty good fish. They're captive bred, as I said before. Really sturdy, probably the sturdiest pure saltwater fish you can have. People want to give them an anemone to live in. Oh boy, you're going to be in for a treat. Because that's not easy to do. The larger anemones that will actually house clownfish are not easy to take care of. That's a very large creature that requires great care. Getting it out of the bag like this would probably kill it. And it will not regenerate like these do, where it's just like, oh, you just severed half my body? Let me turn that severed half into 500 of me, and the rest of me will just get big and eat a clownfish. Which begs the question, will clownfish live in Aiptasia? Maybe? I don't know if anyone's tried it. Mainly because Aiptasia only really get, on their maximum size, about 3 inches long, with a head of probably 2 inches wide. So, clownfish are that big. That's how big a clownfish is. The anemone is not large enough for the clownfish to live in at that point. So I wouldn't recommend these guys for that purpose. You can see that one right there has put out its danger threads, where that's it saying, I'ma kill you. Like the regular tentacles are the I'ma eat ya tentacles. The ones that come out that look like long thread things are the I'ma murder you tentacles. That's only really released when the Aiptasia feels that it's in great danger, which feels is kind of a weird word in this context because they don't feel, they have nerves. They do feel sensation, but they don't have brains or really central nervous system, so the consciousness of an Aiptasia is pretty similar to the consciousness of like a plant. A little bit more advanced, but I have a Venus flytrap. When it feels food, it closes its trap around the food. That's basically what an Aiptasia does. That's pretty much all they can do. Okay, so I'm getting fragments, little baby pieces, and fragments of feet that may be left over. Because any fragment of a foot, if the water conditions are proper, will regenerate into a new Aiptasia. That's why they're such a pain in a reef aquarium. The tiniest piece of them will turn... Ooh, I'm spilling. The tiniest piece comes back with a vengeance. You shred one apart, you pluck it, you pull it, all its little broken tissues turn into new ones. I'd say it's like the Hydra, but the Hydra is a different species of Cnidarian, which is what sea anemones and jellyfish are. Also Hydra. Hydra are very small freshwater hydrozoans. They're cool, probably very small. Well, I've grown them before. They're very small. Barely like a... They're all out of there. A Hydra is like probably a centimeter at the most. So what I'm going to do now, part of the advantage of a rocky substrate, is I can easily pick up 1 grain of rock, which that Aiptasia is now. He's like, oh, this is my new home. I'm going to live here. I can easily pick up rocks containing them and reposition them wherever I want. That's another thing about sand. Sand is nice. Aiptasia don't grow on sand. They grow on rocks. They grow on coral, live rock, aragonite. Whatever you have, they'll grow on it. That guy wasn't attached yet. That guy is. See? They're still alive. They're slightly damaged, but not to the point where it's going to necessarily kill them. That one has deployed his Killia tentacles. There's a lump of them right here on this piece of quartz. I'm going to try to get him because the light primarily sits over here. Do recall that photosynthetic algae they have? Alright, it's been 24 hours since I put the anemones in their new habitat. I did have to change the light because the other one had an oxidation issue with the connector, which is why it was all buggy. It works now, but I kind of like this one better because I have a light and dark setting, which the situation is kind of overexposed right now, but you can see those vague brown spots on the screen kind of waving in the filter air current, or filter current, it's not air, it's salt water. Those are the anemones. They are open and ready for business. We're going to have to let those sit for probably a week before I do anything else with the tank. In this, okay, I've got the camera. This is a different camera. So this is actually my cell phone camera. I've basically taped my cell phone to the wall of the aquarium. You'll also note that the timeline is not the best, in that this is a little bit in the future, probably 3 weeks out from when the anemones were originally set up. So you can see they are quite a bit larger. They've almost doubled or tripled in size. Right now it's about, well, my clock says it's 11:20, but time changed, so it's actually about 10:30 in the morning. Lights went on at 9. Usually when the lights come on, some of them are sleeping and shriveled up. These guys are not. They're fully awake and doing their thing. This is a demonstration of their behavior. Let's see if I can get this into the shot. This is forceps designed for feeding. So if you notice, if I touch one, they immediately retract. They have a muscular wall around themselves. If, however, I were to take some fish food in these forceps, as you can see, some fish food. How about this guy right here? Does he like food? He grabs a hold of the food and immediately begins to eat it. Well, that's not the most perfect way to feed these because it's slow and ineffective, and it results in one anemone getting a lot of food, which you can now see a lot of the spare food is floating around, and that excessively feeds the cyanobacteria, which I know I said I like, and I do, but you don't want them overgrowing the tank. That's my hand. Let's see, where am I facing with this camera? It's a little hard to see. Drop some food in there. Oh, he grabbed it. When they recognize protein that doesn't have themselves, because Aiptasia will not eat themselves. If you were to drop another Aiptasia on top of them, they won't care. But in this context, if if it touches them and it's proteinaceous, they immediately begin closing around it, and then shoving it as hard as they can into themselves, into their one-ended gut. At which point they will digest it, and then once it's digested, it will be expelled back into the environment where the bacteria can break it down. I believe you can see that one in the center has just swallowed. It has that very funny shape. The red color in the gut is the red color of the fish flakes, which are now inside it. That right there. That is a baby Aiptasia growing on the far side of that rock. Compared to the adult-sized Aiptasia, which are substantially larger. They seem pretty active today. I think they can smell me. And with that, I believe you can see that these are actually quite pleasant looking. At least to me. Active, kind of bizarre, definitely growing, very easy to maintain. So, I'll let them keep going, and we'll see what we can do with this tank in the future. You can follow me on Instagram if you can find it, because you can't. You could like, comment, or subscribe, but of those, really only the comments actually matter, because I don't get paid. At least not by YouTube, and hopefully by someone. So with that, that's the conclusion of the video. I'll let these guys eat. Extra.